clip. People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free. If the game is rigged, change the game.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Game changer, game changer, game changer, game changer. The Game Changer Radio Network.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
All right. Fade to Black, just running around the studio. And I heard Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. I was like, oh man, I'm on the air. Here we go. A little out of breath. I made it. How you doing, everybody? Fade to Black. The Tuesday edition. That's right. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today is Tuesday, July 21st. 203 days into the new year. 162 days left. That's right. We are live from the City of Angels Studios right here in Burbank, California. COA Vapor. Makers of the Fade to Black e-juice, and it's called Fader Loops. It's good, man. It's tasty. Just go to the COA banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Use the promo code Jimmy. You get that Fader Nod special. Welcome, everybody. To everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black. For KJCR and the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet, I am your oh-so-humble host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? Big proud salute to the men and women in uniform all around the world fighting the good fight for us. For without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us, and you could not hear me right now. Think about it. Tonight we have researcher and author Jim Mars, live from Tejas. And then Peter Levenda from Washington, D.C. Peter Levenda Part 2. Tomorrow night, Clifford Stone will be here. Fired up. Call the numbers 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in Fade to Black 14 when we are ready. All right. Become a fader not today. Just go to faders.org, www.faders.org, www.faders.org. It's free. It's fun. And yes, somebody is texting me and I left my phone on. I do that about once a month. Hey, did anybody see, I want to see what the reaction is on Twitter. Did you guys see the gun drone video? Anybody seen that thing? Holy crap. Watched it. I did. I watched it like 5 times today. And that is about the scariest thing I've ever seen. And it's legal. And let's just give some people some really bad ideas. The next thing you know what I mean? I mean, seriously. It's like the scariest part of any sci-fi movie that you can think of, and it's like real now. Man, it's like Snake, Escape from New York, and it's real. FAA wants to get in on this, and the police are saying, well, he hasn't broken any laws. And I'm sure it's not the only one. But what a frightening video, man. And the thing was stable, too. I don't know what was on. It looked like a Glock or something on the front. But, man, with the camera, that is just, that's bad news. That's some new laws are going to have to be written. I mean, when somebody gets shot with one of those, it's no longer a human being. Think about that for a second. It is just frightening. Walter just tweeted, I'm going to need a gun drone to protect myself from the other gun drones. I've got a story about that tonight. We're going to talk about that actually in the news that you know nothing about. With that, let's get this show cracking. Somebody posted the other day, and I saw this. Man, we are 70, or I don't know. The symposium, MUFON symposium, is closing in really, 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 really fast. I don't know how the tickets are sold for that event, but get your tickets before it does sell out. And if you're only going to go one day, go Saturday, because that's the day the Hangar One thing is going to be there. And I want to meet all of the Fadernauts. So, and I did see some postings going down about a possible Fadernaut get-together. If you guys pull this off, of course I will be there, but it's up to you to set it up. I'm only going to be there for sure Saturday, and then parts of Sunday too as well. But I don't know what everybody else's schedules are. You guys need to work that out amongst yourselves. Follow us on Twitter. You guys know what to do, at Church Radio. You guys go discuss it. You guys figure it out, and then clue me in. All right? But I want to meet as many Fadernauts as possible. It's a great opportunity. It's right here in Southern California. All right? Let's go. Let's get the show cracking. Today, Cat Stevens. Huh? Is that his name? I thought he changed his name. Cat Stevens. Didn't he change his name to something else? I guess he's changed it back. Cat Stevens is 67 years old. John Lovitz is 58. And I think John's a funny guy, actually. He's a very unique dude, so he made the list. It was one of those where I was like, but you know what? He did have his moments with it doesn't matter. John Lovitz, 58 years old. Our dead guy's birthday today are birthdays. Robin Williams, 1951 to 2014, died at the age of 63. And Don Knotts, 1924 to 2006, died at the age of 81. And I say the same thing every time. I'm going to do it now. Again, 1924, think about what the world was like. 1928, 29, he's 5 years old. He gets to look around and see what the world is like, go through World War II. I'm talking about technology and things, trying to fly across the Atlantic solo. Things like that were going on. But he made it all the way to 2006. Can you imagine what he witnessed in his life over those 81 years? He saw it all. Don Knotts played the role of Deputy Barney Fife on the Andy Griffith Show. Hilarious. In 1996, he was honored by TV Guide. 1996 now. He was honored by TV Guide and ranked him 27 out of 50 in its greatest TV stars of all time. Just to make that list is an honor. He came in right at mid-pack at number 27. But for me, and yeah, Barney was cool. And Andy Griffith's Show, I loved that show. I did. I watched it all the time. Still do. But it wasn't that cranked it up a notch for me when it comes to Don Knotts. It was the run of movies that he made between 1964 and 1968. The Incredible Mr. Limpet, hilarious. The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, Attaboy Luther. The Reluctant Astronaut, remember that? And how about The Shakiest Gun in the West in 1968? Funny guy. Don Knotts died on February 24th, 2006 at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center right here in Los Angeles, California, and from stuff related to lung cancer. He lived a good one, though, 81 years old. Happy birthday, Don Knotts. All right. Follow us on Twitter. That's at JChurchRadio. And what you want to do is you want to hashtag F2B, jump into the sandbox. We do run somewhere. Last night was a record-setting night in tweets, but, we're going to do somewhere between 2,000, 3,000 tweets during the show tonight. If you want to hang out with the rest of us, you can do so. Hashtag F2B. Get yourself some tweet deck, install it, and use it. And once you do it, you will never go back to normal Twitter again. And don't be scared. TweetDeck is a Twitter product, so there you go. And it loads really easily in your browser because then it's just an app. It's not a website. And it runs really, really, really well. You can email throughout the show, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Simple enough to do. I monitor that. Well, I don't, but they do here. And the good ones do get through to me. You can also just go over to the contact page at jimmychurchradio.com, where we use non-NSA, specially encrypted servers. And if your email is good, I just might read it on the air. And if it's really good, I just might write back. Tonight, author, researcher Jim Marrs is with us. And then Peter Levenda for Peter Levenda Part 2. Tomorrow night, Clifford Stone is here. The call-in number is 323-825-5045. How do we top last night's show? Oh, man, Race Hobbs hanging out. The breaking news with Stephen Hawking. Micah frigging Hanks. I really like doing shows with Micah. Well, Race too, everybody. But Micah's just, he's on his game. And then, of course, Peter Levenda last night. What an amazing show. But tonight, Jim Marrs and Peter Levenda in the same evening right here on Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. I'll be back with all the news that you know nothing about right after this short break. Stay with us.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station, where the Fader Knots rock.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. Fade to Black. On the Game Changer Radio Network. Man, that guy's got pipes. So yesterday, I get this, I posted the pictures of my new Stormtrooper mug from Jeremy. And then I get email. I got a couple of emails today from you saying, hey, man, I can see the power bites in the background. And then there was a post on Facebook, and I responded back too as well. I was like, I don't get it. Yes, I do power bites. They're right here in the studio. They sit next to my console. And while I am sitting here talking to you, I'm staring at my power bites. And I'm at that point in the show. Yes. And somebody said, hey, man, you need to drop the power bite in the coffee. I was tempted. I wonder what that would do. Probably tastes pretty good. But, we'll do that next time. Right now, in the mouth, power bite, done. Live on the air. How do I do it? I do it with power bites. Yes, I really do. I take them every day. Take them every day on the show. I take them when I get up. I do power bites. They are a complete multivitamin mineral formula designed to naturally boost your energy. It goes to work now. Power bites have the same good bacteria found in better yogurts. Helps your body absorb all of those little flecks and nutrients that you see because they're not a corporate vitamin company. They make their stuff in small batches and they ship it direct to you. Green Turtle Bay has been making vitamins right here in the United States for 20 years. They produce high-quality nutritional, dietary, and health supplements. They do. Just go to energywave.com. That's energywave.com. Use the promo code KGRA and get free shipping on your order. It's very simple. Do what I do. Call 1-800-TURTLE5. Live operators are standing by. 1-800-887-8535. Energywave.com. Go back, Lee Tappy. Yeah. On this day in history, in 2011, on this day, NASA's Space Shuttle program completes its final and 135th mission. That's right. The shuttle landed the Atlantis at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The ending of an era. Sad day. Sad day. Sad day. You would think that after that we had stuff planned. And we didn't. And we don't. I really did. I thought, okay, all right, so they got something up their sleeve. They're going to roll something out. They've got a backup plan. They've been working on something. And here we are, 2015, flying up with the Soviets. Fader facts. The space station astronauts see 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets every single day. That's a Fader fact. 16. Would you go round the clock? Would you do that? Would you stay up 24 hours just to see all 16? I'm sure somebody has. If they were taking power bites, power mates, they could do it. All the news that you know nothing about. 3, not 2, not 1, not 4. The number is 3. 3 Siberian tigers, also known as Amur tigers, were born in the Taigan Safari Park in Russia's Crimea. Notice I said Russia's Crimea. Although newborn triplets are not rare for the breed, with Siberian tigers, they usually give birth to up to 4 cubs. Unfortunately, it's the whole litter doesn't survive. But this time, all 3 cubs are doing great. Their eyes aren't open yet. I've seen the pictures. Somebody tweet them out. Sorry, I wasn't really prepared for that, but I saw the pictures. I would like to play with the tiger cub. With a tiger cub, we've always heard those strange stories, but, attacking their owners and things going foul. But if you just raised a tiger cub, little tiger kitten from the palm of your hand, and just hang out with it. I mean, are you guys buds? Are you buds? Does he watch the house for you now? Stranger knocks at the door. He protects you. Are you guys buds? Could you do that? You would think maybe. It'd be cool. Anyway, they're now trying to name the 3 tigers in the tiger family. So there you go. 3 at the same time. Somebody tweet those out because the pictures are absolutely amazing. They're white. Well, they're kind of a white gray. Very cool. A former Chicago cop says he was fired from the agency that was investigating reports of police brutality because he refused his boss's demands to exonerate cops in several deadly shooting incidents. His name is Lorenzo Davis, 65 years old. He was a supervising investigator at Chicago's Independent Police Review Authority, otherwise called IPRA. The agency's chief administrator, Scott Ando, informed the staff that IPRA no longer employed Davis in an email dated July 9th, less than 2 weeks after Davis received a negative performance review accusing him of bias. This story's not going to end here. I'm just reporting it. You just wait. The parent company of Ashley Madison, that's right, the matchmaking website for cheating spouses, says it was hacked and that the personal information of some of its users was posted online. Well, some of its users is reportedly up to 37 million people. In addition, the person or persons behind the attack are threatening to release all of the site's personal information, including its members, sexual fantasies, and financial information if the company does not take down Ashley Madison now, according to a prominent security blog. And that blog, Toronto-based Avid Life Media Inc., says it had hacked the hacker's posts, which included snippets of personal information taken down, and that's been removed, and now they've hired another technology security firm. You don't think there's some nervous people right now? Well, lesson learned. Don't go to a site for cheating spouses. And if you do, and you get caught, cheating spouse, that's your fault. Oh, man. Can you imagine the look on your wife or husband's face when they find out? Oh, man. You ask for it. You ask for it. I mean, nothing good will come from visiting a site like that and then taking it a step further and coughing up your credit card. Nothing good will come from that. Yesterday, 2 California lawmakers, not one but 2, introduced a bill that would allow officials to immobilize drones that get in the way of emergency responses like firefighting. Now, we had this disastrous thing that happened this week here in Southern California. It was on the I-15, which goes from San Bernardino up to Las Vegas. And a brush fire, jumped the freeway. Dozens of cars caught on fire. Luckily, nobody died. And up to 1,000 people were running up the freeway and up the mountain and trying to get away from this. And it was a really bad scene. But the helicopters were grounded because there were a bunch of personal drones with cameras on them flying around, filming the situation. And it got out of control. The bill comes in response to not only that incident, but a few more over the past few years. Assemblyman Mike Gatto, he's a Democrat out of Glendale, which is the city right next to us here in Southern California. We're in Burbank. Glendale is 1 block to my left. Ted Gaines, Republican of El Dorado. They both want the Senate Bill 168 to offer protection to emergency responders so they can disable drones that are hindering operations without the possibility of being charged for the destruction of property. Now, you know what they're saying is effectively here that they can shoot these things out of the sky. And if you are stupid enough to go and take your drone with a camera on it during an emergency operation and houses and cars are burning and you want to go film it, yeah, we can shoot it out of the sky. Matter of fact, I'll do it for them. There you go. And there needs to be, I saw the warning stuff about this. If you lived here in Southern California, you were getting the emergency messages about this. And I get this banner on my cell phone that literally, it was a poster, the Ghostbusters, the no thing, and it was a no drones thing. I thought, well, who in the heck is flying? But there were plenty, and they had to ground helicopters over it. Tulane University archaeologists have discovered several Mayan hieroglyphic panels in Guatemala, and it sheds new light on the culture and history of the Mayans. The discoveries include a well-preserved stela or monument from the archaeological site El Aquiatal that dates to the 5th century. I've seen the tablets. They are incredible. I just don't read Mayan, but they look cool, and they're big. They got a lot of stuff written on them. I'm not making light of this. You have to see it. It's pretty cool. In a report this past Sunday, Bloomberg outlined evidence that Chinese state-sponsored hacks targeting the United States over the last few years have been part of an overarching plan to develop a database of Americans and collect information on key people. And I'm quoting here from the report. China is building the Facebook of human intelligence capabilities, end quote, said Adam Myers, the vice president of intelligence for the cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. They are gathering everything. So that's when you start lying. Think about that. You want to be somebody you've never been? Do it now. Oscar-winning film director Laura Poitras is suing the United States government to find out why she's being searched, questioned, and subjected to enhanced security screenings over the past 6 years. She's been stopped over 90 times. I'm filing this lawsuit because the government uses the U.S. border to bypass the rule of law, she said. She went on to say this simply should not be tolerated in a democracy. She's a professional journalist and an Academy Award-winning documentary filmmaker, and her work has also received a Pulitzer Prize and a MacArthur Genius Grant. Her documentary about the National Security Agency whistleblower Edward Snowden, it's called Citizen4, it's very good, won her an Oscar earlier this year. In her federal complaint, she says she's an American citizen, and she said she was searched and questioned every time she entered the U.S. between 2006 and 2012 on more than 40 occasions. She was also subjected to secondary security screening on more than 50 occasions while leaving the U.S., outside the U.S. during the course of international travel, and on domestic flights inside of the United States. Security agents gave her different reasons for why she was being stopped. They told her she had a criminal record, even though she has never been arrested. Another time, she was told her name appeared in a national security threat database. And on another occasion, she was on the government's no-fly list, according to the complaint filed in U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. this past Monday. And that's it. That's all the news that you know nothing about. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. When I come back after this short break, we are joined by the one and only Jim Mars, live from Tejas. And then after that, Peter Levenda is here for Peter Levenda Part 2. Stay with us. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Be right back.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hi, this is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Today, everybody, the Fadernauts and planet Earth is vaping. And I'm very proud to announce our very own e-juice. When we were approached by City of Angels Vapor about Fade to Black e-juice, I wanted to make sure that it was the very best and that the flavors were something that I could create myself. And we did just that. Introducing Fade to Black Fader Loops. This will take you right back to Saturday morning cartoons and your favorite bowl of Fruity Loopy cereal. Just click on the banner or go to www.coavapor.com. Enter the promo code Jimmy for the Fader Not special. That's www.coavapor.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you, and your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers. We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Attention, all Fader Knots. Studio Dome has a special deal on their SD1 Bluetooth speaker. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on their banner, enter the promo code Jimmy, and you get $40 off and free shipping on the SD1. It's voice activated, comes with a USB antenna, cables, and a carry bag. Never listen to your phone, tablet, or laptop speakers ever again. It's the only way to listen to Fade to Black. That's JimmyChurchRadio.com, Studio Dome banner, promo code Jimmy. Go back, Lee Tappy.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Tonight, Jim Mars is with us. He's in the batter's box. A little bit later, Peter Levenda is back for Peter Levenda Part 2. He'll be live from Washington, D.C. This is Fade to Black. Excited. I'm always excited when Jim Mars joins us on the show. He's an award-winning journalist, author. He graduated from the University of North Texas with a degree in journalism. Mars worked for and owned several Texas newspapers before becoming an independent journalist, author. Mars is the author of the New York Times bestsellers Crossfire, The Plot That Killed Kennedy, the basis for Oliver Stone's film JFK, and Rule by Secrecy, his in-depth overview of the UFO phenomenon. Alien Agenda. It is the best-selling non-fiction book of UFOs in the world. Having been translated into several foreign languages, he is a frequent guest on several nationwide talk and radio, TV programs, and television, including ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, C-SPAN, the Discovery Channel, Learning Channel, History Channel, Good Morning America, Geraldo, Montel Williams, Today, Tech TV, and Larry King, Coast to Coast, and Fade to Black. Some of his books, The Rise of the, I did this just for Jim, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, Crossfire, Alien Agenda, the Terror Conspiracy, the Terror Conspiracy Revisited, Above Top Secret, Spies, The True Story of America's Psychic Warfare Program, Rule by Secrecy, the hidden history that connects the Trilateral Commission, the Freemasons, and the Great Pyramids, the Sisterhood of the Rose, Inside Job, Unmasking the 9/11 Conspiracies, the $1 Trillion Conspiracy, How the New World Order, Man-Made Diseases, and zombie banks are destroying America. And his latest, Our Occulted History. Do the global elite conceal ancient aliens? I would like to welcome back to the program Jim Mars. Jim, how are you tonight?
Wow. Star of stage, screen, and outer space.
I did that just for you. I thought I'm going to list everything. I wanted to do it, Jim, for fun, but also to see if I would run out of breath. And I did like 3 times.
Well, it was easy for you to say. Hey, you missed the latest one, though, the brand new one, population control.
I've got
corporate owners are killing us.
Yes, I've got that. That was coming up, but okay, you snuck that in.
Well, you got to plug for the new book.
Well, that was going to be our conversation, but now we're not going to go there.
No, we won't do that. No.
So, one of the things that I just kind of want to lead off with this, you are somebody that it seems like every guest that we have on the show, most of them, if not all of them, are friends of yours, friends of ours. But your name gets brought up all the time. And when we just came off of Contact in the Desert together, and we've done a few conferences together, and the one thing that I have noted that happens to you that doesn't quite happen with everybody else that we respect, when you speak, the room gets quiet and people listen. Are you getting used to that? And do you feel that? The room, you can hear a pin drop and they snap to attention. How does that?
Well, yeah, Jimmy, that impacts upon my senses. I'm like any other public speaker. I'm always kind of looking around to seeing if people are falling asleep or, are they drooping in their chair? Are they getting up and walking out? And I got to admit, I'm pretty gratified that when I make a talk, very, very few people get up and go. And I seem to catch their attention. And, of course, I think part of the reason is that I'm just always searching for truth. I always find out what's really going on. And that's kind of my motivation. I'm not a rabble rouser, and I'm not a revolutionary. I'm not a political one-sided psychopath. I just want to know what's going on. I mean, if the mafia is running the country, okay, all right, that's not up to me to judge it. I just want to know that's what's going on, and if I find out that's what's going on, then I feel obligated because of my background in journalism to share that with everybody. Tell everybody, here's what's going on. And just like my latest book, Population Control, if you're perfectly satisfied with eating poisonous foods and drinking poisonous water and breathing poisonous air, and you want to see your children grow obese and grow up and have to worry about cancers and fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome and all of these maladies that I never even heard about when I was a kid, then, hey, fine, power to you. Get after it, But I just think people need and deserve to know what's really going on so that then they can make informed decisions on what they're doing. Because, Jimmy, let me tell you something. I've come to a full realization that, I know you and you're a smart guy, okay? And I know lots of smart people, but I don't care how brilliant you are, how smart you are, how educated you are, if you are making decisions on incomplete or erroneous information, then none of your decisions are ever going to work out.
You and I, we had a private conversation. I'll go ahead and tell everybody who was with us. It was you and myself and Don Schmidt and Linda Moulton Howe. The four of us were off in a corner back at Contact in the Desert when we were talking privately and away from everybody else. Now, what I'm going to flip everybody out, what we were actually talking about. We were talking about health. And we were talking about food and taking care of ourselves. I know people were thinking that we were, talking about some secret alien agenda, but that's what we were talking about. We were talking about health, and I thought the conversation was amazing. But how do you take care of yourself? And do you read labels? And are you fully consciously aware of GMOs?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm especially aware of Monsanto's herbicide Roundup, which seems to be ubiquitous. They put that on everything. In fact, they put it on crops maybe that don't even have a bug problem. They do it right before harvest so that the plants will age and dry up faster. Okay, so they can harvest quicker. And what they're finding out now is, and even the World Health Organization has finally admitted, that it's a carcinogen. Okay, now not only is it a carcinogen, but they have seen a total parallel rise between the use of Monsanto's herbicide Roundup, whose primary ingredient is glyphosate, and the rise of autism in children. In fact, Dr. Stephanie Sennett, a MIT research scientist, has stated publicly that if we don't get off of that, if we don't stop Monsanto, by the year 2025, 1 in every 2 children are going to be diagnosed autistic.
If you are a young couple and you buy a house, right, in suburbia, right next to, a Costco or whatever, and you got a Lowe's next door, what do? You do the things, you do the same thing that everybody else does. You go and visit those stores every single day because you're building your house, you're improving it, you're building a deck on the back. But you're also going down there and buying things like Roundup and spraying the crap out of your house, up and down, backwards and forwards. And if you are a young couple and you're planning on having kids, that's going to have a bad ending, isn't it?
Well, and it's the combination of that. I mean, there are dangerous chemicals in everything, household appliances, deodorants, shampoo. All of them have these chemicals in there, and collectively, they work on your immunization system, and they work on your health. Now, you ask me what I do. Well, I'm very, very fortunate in that I'm married to one of the best cooks in the county, and she is very food conscious.
Right.
We buy our fruit and vegetables from a farm co-op, which means we're getting fresh vegetables and fresh fruit from locally grown, and they're organic, okay? No pesticides and et cetera, et cetera. What's really interesting is we've been doing this for years thanks to my wife, and yes, we do read the labels. We read the labels of everything. If you see aspartame, if you see Splenda, if you see any of those things, put it back on the shelf, okay? You need to study up. You need to know what they're doing to you. And then what's interesting is that we've been doing this for years, and it used to be you had to hunt high and low. You mentioned Costco. We used to go to Costco and try to find organic stuff, and it just wasn't there. But it is today, okay? And in fact, where I'm out here in the country, and unfortunately, well, I'll tell you, here's what's happened to America in a nutshell. When I moved out to this rural county about 40 years ago, we'd go up to the little town of Decatur, and we'd go shopping, and we'd go to about 6 different stores. We'd go to the dry goods store, we'd go to the farm and ranch store, we'd go to the feed store, we'd go to the grocery store, we'd go to the dry goods store, we'd go to the clothing store, okay? All of those stores are now out of business. Now we just go to Walmart, okay? And everything you pick up says made in China. And so, that's where we are. But even at Walmart, we've noticed now there's whole shelves devoted to organic food. And even then you have to be very cautious because, unfortunately, the U.S. government, in the form of the Drug Administration, USDA, or the Agriculture Department, sometimes there's even questions about what they're labeling organic. But if you'll try organic, it'll really work. In fact, Jimmy, let me tell you a quick story here, and I think this tells us. One of the questions I get asked about, well, all this bad food, this bad water, and see, my main point is this is not just by accident. This is not just greedy corporations trying to make a buck and the devil take the hindmost. This is a concentrated, conscious effort on these self-styled globalists who control these multinational corporations that control our food, our water, even our entertainment and our news. And they want us dead. They are the offspring of the families who years ago were into eugenics, which was to try to better the human condition and cull out the undesirables in our country, okay? In fact, as recently as the 1930s, most of the states had sterilization laws. If you didn't come up to par, you didn't have the right skin color or the right bone structure or the right IQ, you could be subject to involuntary sterilization. Now, what happened to that is that back in the 30s, the Germans got hold of that, and they said, hey, that's a good idea. We need to breed us a master race. And so they carried it to its logical extremes, which is, well, here's some people we don't like, some Jews and gypsies, so we'll just kill them. And, of course, that created the concentration camps and the Holocaust, and the rest of the world was aghast and said, wait a minute, we don't want that. So these eugenicists have kind of had to crawl back into the woodwork, but they're still there and their ideas are still there. And now, which you hear them carry on about, whether it's Ted Turner or Bill Gates or any of these people, they all say that the basic problem in the world today is overpopulation. And if you live in a big city, especially if you're trying to drive around out in Los Angeles, I can see where that would appeal to you. And you go, yeah, of course, there's just too many people. But number one, that's not actually true, because it's been estimated that the whole 7.5 billion population of the world could actually live quite comfortably just in the state of Texas. And if you wanted to even spread out further, you could put the whole world's population in just the continent of Australia, and everybody would have a few acres apiece, okay? So it's not really an overpopulation problem. That's just their excuse. And but they truly believe that overpopulation is a big problem, and they think it's taking away some of their resources that they'd rather spend on themselves. And so you have people like Prince Philip, the British royalty, who has said in public, quote, in the event that I am reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus in order to contribute something to solve overpopulation. In other words, he wants you dead, and they all do, and they're adulterating and contaminating our food, our water, our air, and this is why the drug population has just blossomed, and the pharmaceutical corporations are now almost running the world.
Is it a way to, and this is the way my polluted mind works when I look at these facts and think about this, is it a way to reset the money wheel and then make the money cyclical and earn it all over a second time by the population growth and new houses to sell and a new everything? Is that what it comes down to?
Well, it all figures in there. You see, if you poison the food and the water and the air, it's a slow, accumulative thing. It's not like just people dropping dead in the street. But it affects the fringes, the weakest fringe of the society, the very old, the very young. And now they're culling the population, and then the middle, like you mentioned, the young couple buying a house. Okay, well, maybe see if the old couple who might have lived to be 90 or 100, but they died off when they were in their mid-70s because they weren't eating right. Well, then the young couple, yes, now they get to sell another house. But the main thing is that while they trim the old, very old, and very young, the in between they are sickening. Think of the obesity in the United States. It's between 1993 and 2008 or 10, obesity increased 85%. Holy cow! And when you're obese, then you have health problems. And you have health problems, you got to go to the doctor. You go to the doctor, what do? They put you on pills. They put you on medicines. And so these corporate owners, they're not only trimming the population and reducing the population because of their mistaken belief that the world's overpopulated, but then they're profiting from this by making everybody else sick and buying up all their chemical medicines. In fact, are you ready for this?
Yes.
Jimmy, if I tell you the first leading cause of death in the United States today is heart attack, that probably doesn't surprise you, does it?
Okay.
All right, but wait, what if I tell you the second cause of death is cancer? That doesn't surprise you either. But what if I told you that the third leading cause of death in the United States today is conventional medical treatment? And I'm not talking about drug overdoses. I'm not talking about misuse of drugs. I'm not talking about illegal drugs. I'm talking about conventional doctor-prescribed medical treatment.
Such as diabetes, weight loss, high blood pressure, whatever?
Well, there is almost 300,000 deaths in the United States every year, according to the American Medical Association journal, JAMA. For example, as far back as 2000, there were 12,000 yearly deaths from unnecessary surgery, 7,000 deaths from medication errors in hospital, 20,000 deaths from other errors in hospital, and 80,000 deaths from infections acquired in hospital, and then another 106,000 deaths attributed to FDA-approved and correctly prescribed medicines. In other words, drugs that have a bad counter effect on you. So there you go. And 300,000 people, now, if I told you that ISIS had beheaded 300,000 Americans, you'd get really upset, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we'd have an issue, wouldn't we?
Yeah, but I tell you, American conventional medicine is killing 300,000 Americans, and everybody just kind of goes, oh well.
Why? Yeah, that's why I should be Jim Mars for president, but that's another show. What about the one?
I wouldn't last but one day.
I'm surprised.
First time I got up and told the truth, Lee Harvey McVeigh would shoot me in the head.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you've made it this far, so why not? But
well, that's because I publish books, and nobody much reads anymore.
Yeah.
They're all watching TV.
But they listen to you. That's all that matters. You should see Twitter right now. They love you, Jim. Is this, what about, and I brought this up last week on the show, and I can't believe that we don't have somebody running for office with this as a platform, but the proliferation of these prescription medication commercials on television.
That used to, when I was a kid, that was against the law.
It was against the law. Right.
On TV for drugs, and now that's all you see. And let me tell you what this has led to. This recent shooting of the Marines in Chattanooga, terrible thing, and the church shooting, in South Carolina, terrible. The thing at Virginia Tech, the thing, and what's the common denominator? Well, if you listen to TV, it's guns. But I'm telling you, that's BS. I grew up in Texas. We had guns. We even took guns to school. Hey, look at my new 22. Nobody shot anybody. The problem is the drugs, the psychotropic drugs. They're all on these drugs or just coming off of them, which apparently is even worse than going on them.
Right.
And yet the media cannot talk about that, because if you watch television, broadcast, every time they cut to a commercial, if they're not selling you a car or truck, they're selling you a drug. And so they can't bite the hand that feeds them, so they will not talk about the drug problem, and that's where it is.
What's really strange to me is I think if we polled 1 million people and found out their health conditions, and the ones that didn't go to a hospital, and the ones that didn't take drugs, and the ones that did, and now let's check out who's really healthy. And I think it would be shocking.
Absolutely. Now, here's one that'll creep you out. They estimate that about 30 million Americans now are on these psychiatric drugs for depression, for anxiety, for stimulation. Okay, now, the literature says that these drugs promote feelings of homicidal tendencies, suicidal tendencies. Okay, so now we got 30 million people on these drugs. If only 0.1% react violently to these drugs, you're talking about 30,000 potential mass murderers running loose.
And suicides. And
suicidal, and more to suicide. Exactly. I mean, it's just incredible. And the most incredible thing to me as a journalist is not so much what's happening, as the old thing says, stuff happens, all the time, but the fact that the major media, that's supposed to be the media, is supposed to tell you what's going on, supposed to help guide your thinking and your arguments and your policies, and they won't talk about these things. They will not tell you that the food's poison, the air's poison, that the water's poison. 70% of the water in the United States today, they're putting sodium fluoride in it. Okay, now here's the whole truth of that matter. Way back there, this was a product, more or less of a waste product of the aluminum industry, and also of making of atomic bombs, atomic weapons. You had a waste product of sodium fluoride, which up until about World War II was sold as a rat poison. It came in little containers and said, danger, poison.
Right.
You know, you weren't even supposed to handle it without gloves. But then during World War II, the Germans found out that you could put just a little bit of sodium fluoride in the water, and it would, people drank it, would become passive and non-resistant. And so they put it in the water of their concentration camps to keep the inmates from revolting and from acting up, you know. Well, the Russians picked up on that. They used that in the Gulag. And now in the United States, they figured out this is a good way to dumb down the population. Plus, it's a good way for corporations to get rid of this dangerous waste, which by international convention is outlawed for putting into the water, which can get in the oceans. And so they got us to drink it, because they managed to convince a few dentists that between the ages of 6 years old and 12 years old, kids that drank just a little bit of fluoride in the water had a few less cavities than the others, okay? And yet, that was only between the age of 6 and 12. Afterwards, it doesn't much matter, and before that, it's actually dangerous. All you got to do is pick up some fluoride toothpaste and look on the back, and you'll see a warning. It says, if you accidentally swallow some, call the CDC, because it's a poison. Now, that's bad enough if you want to have fluoride in your toothpaste and put poison in your mouth every time you brush your teeth with the risk of swallowing some, and it is cumulative. But the problem is that now they put it routinely in your drinking water, and this is not done by medical people. This is done by city employees who get the stuff and pour it in. How do we know how much they're putting in? How you know, it's involuntary medication is what it is. And yet they've got the doctors under their control and the dentists, because if you'll stop and think about it, let's look at the medical profession. First, you put in 7, 8, 10 years before you can become a full-fledged doctor. So you probably run up a heck of a debt, all right? And then you get licensed by the government. So if you do something out of line, they can jerk your license, and there's your whole livelihood gone away. Plus, you have to go through the medical schools, who are funded, founded, and by the pharmaceutical corporation, so they give you this one-sided deal about how great vaccines are and how safe everything is, and if you get cancer, you got to have chemotherapy and all of this stuff, and they buy into it, and if they start questioning it, then they get in trouble. The AMA gets after them, the government gets after them, and the IRS gets after them, and you've got a hard time. And in that way, they just keep this death machine rolling along, but it's making tons of money for the corporate interest.
If you are, I thought that, our government and agencies and controlling agencies are there to protect us, the citizenry, but yet that there are politicians watching the same programming that you and I are. And they sitting in their office watching a television commercial roll by that says, and use of this drug, it will have suicidal thoughts of death, cause death.
Upset stomach,
right.
Blah, blah, blah. Oh, man, give me some of that.
And nobody has sat up and said, what is that doing on television?
Exactly.
We need to control
that. Don't dare do it, because let me tell you what's happened, you see. In Germany in the 1930s, when the Nazi Party gained control over the state, over the government, then the state then turned and gained control over the corporations. And it was that very combination of state and corporate power that's the very dictionary definition of fascism, okay? But fascism, that term came from the Italian dictator in World War II, Benito Mussolini, because he came to power thanks to his black-shirted fascistas, okay? And so they coined the term fascism. But Mussolini himself said fascism is really not the correct term. The more correct term is corporatism. And so what happened there in Nazi Germany and fascist Italy was that the state gained control over the corporations, and that dual power was known as fascism. In modern America, the corporations have gained control over the state. but the end result's the same. That's why we have fascism in this country. And that's why you're not going to get any good out of Congress, because they're either bought and paid for by the corporations, which, by the way, the Supreme Court has now said they are the same as an individual, and they get to pay as much money to a politician as they want to, because that's just their First Amendment right to act as an individual. Of course, when the corporation produces a deadly product and people die and you try to sue them, then, oh, I'm sorry, we're incorporated. You can't sue any of the officers or the owners. You only sue the corporation. They're incorporated for $1, so you can't get anywhere. So it's really an unbalanced, unfair system, but don't look to Congress. And the people understand this, I think, because, Jimmy, if you'll notice, the latest polls show that the approval rating of Congress down in the single digits. 9% of the public approve of Congress, okay? So they understand it. If our political representatives are either bought and paid for or intimidated, blackmailed, if you will, okay? And the thing is, this is nothing new. That's exactly how the Nazi Party acted when they came to power. Anybody that tried to stand up to them, if they couldn't beat them in the streets in a gang fight, if they couldn't beat them up with the SS coming around, well, then they just killed them. And that's the way it operates, and that's the way it's operating here.
Let's take a quick break. This is Fade to Black tonight. Jim Mars is with us. Wait till you hear what I got when we come back. Jim and I don't play. We're not going to do it tonight. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be back more with Jim Mars right after this. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
Hey, everybody. What's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. And check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. Expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONSymposium.com. That's MUFONSymposium.com. Go Beckley Tepe.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air, to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's out of here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With a mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, welcome back. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Jim Mars is with us in a little bit. Peter Levenda will be back. Bad food, bad water, bad drugs, bad air, big money. That's what I say. Jim, the Georgia Guidestones, are they real?
Of course they are. They're etched in stone, as they say. That's a granite monument that is in rural Georgia, and there's kind of a mystery surrounding it because it was commissioned by a monument company by a man who said his name was R.A. Christian, but he himself admitted this was a pseudonym. And so we don't really know who he was or who he represented, but in 7 languages, including some ancient dead languages, they are putting forth the qualifications, conditions for a more reasonable, rational world, they say. And the very first admonition on the Georgia Guidestone reflects the thinking of these eugenicists who are embedded in the ruling elite, in the New World Order folks, if you will. And it states, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Well, boy, doesn't that sound warm and fuzzy. That's just great. But wait a minute, it begs the question, there's 7.5 billion people in the world today. What's supposed to happen to the other 7 billion of us? And more importantly, who's going to decide who gets to stay and who has to go?
And that is the $1 million question. Who does get to stay? If you take off, if you look, you just can't have all the movers and shakers and the money left over because who's going to work? Number one,
right.
That part of it doesn't make any sense. So, and if you
but wait, Jimmy. See, that's what everybody says, and that's why right now the unemployment figures in the United States are just through the roof. They're already saying 6, 8, 9%, and actually once you go off the unemployment rolls, you're not trying to collect your unemployment insurance, then they don't count you anymore. So actually there's thousands and thousands of Americans that are either underemployed or not employed, and the problem here is because we all have been brought up with the Christian work ethic. If you don't work, you don't eat. That's the way the world. That's the way the world is. But the problem is, with technology today, everybody doesn't have to work. But everybody should be doing something, and they should be doing something productive and something for the good of society. Everybody, I don't care how poor you are, I don't care how undereducated you are, everybody has a interest or an ability. It might be as a musician. It might be as a wood carver. It might be as a plumber. That's the thing that kills me. Just go try to find a really good plumber, a really good carpenter. I mean, these are people who are vital in the workplace, and yet you can hardly find good ones anywhere. They're few and far between, and they command a healthy price, as they should. No, everybody wants a position today, and there's just not all the positions. So we could be living in a material paradise on this planet. In fact, Jimmy, let me throw this at you. Here is, to me, the proof not only of conspiracy, but of the greatest conspiracy taking place today. And that is that I think you'll agree with me, and I think everybody listening, if you stop and think about it, you'll agree with me, that we have the technology available to us today right off the shelf, not some future thing, not prototypes. I'm talking about available technology that we can feed, clothe, house, give basic medical attention to every single living person on the earth, okay? And yet, we don't like to think about this, but even as we sit and here talking on the radio, and even as your listeners are out there tuning in and listening, in the back of our mind, we know that around this planet right now, there are literally thousands, if not millions, of children starving to death. Now, wait a minute.
It doesn't make sense.
I don't want that. You don't want that.
No.
I doubt anybody listening wants that. So how do you explain that? We have the technology, we have the capability, but it's not being done. And I'll tell you why. This is the proof of conspiracy. The only reason that those kids are starving is because somewhere somebody wants it that way. If nobody wanted it that way, it wouldn't be that way.
If we took and we talk about the 1%ers, forget about it's the 1% of the 1%ers.
Yeah, it's about 1/10 of 1%.
Yeah, you take if you just took a small smitten of that money, because it is an extraordinary amount of money now, and when you look at it, it's off the charts. But when you if you just taxed, 1% of that 1/10 of 1%. The money would build houses.
All the money we can handle.
Yeah.
Or I'll put it this way: How about we just call an armistice, a ceasefire in Afghanistan for 1 day?
1 day.
That'd be enough millions saved right there to actually feed, clothe, and house a bunch of people. In fact, I pointed out in my book. I don't know if I can find the exact statistics here. But it's absolutely amazing that we have. Let me see here.
Well, while you are looking that up, what's fascinating to me, Jim, is how there isn't one politician, one businessman, one person, let alone one country, that would stand up and say, "Look, this is just stupid. All we do is throw away food. We're rolling in money. There's no issues with anything. Let's take care of business." And nobody will step up and say this. It doesn't.
Well, because of the housing bust, I can't find the exact numbers, but it's immense. There's something like, 300,000 empty homes in the United States right now, just go in the weed because there's nobody there. And yet we've got, 50,000 homeless?
Right.
Excuse me, wait a minute. There's a disconnect there, Put those people in a home. Big deal.
Yeah. And not only that, not the old thing, give a man some dignity. But you would have that, but you would turn, so many people back into productive because they don't have people that say yes to them.
You know what my solution is to that is, and I've thought about this for a long time, and it actually worked back in the 30s, is we reinstitute something like the WPA, the Works Project Administration. Okay, they did this during the Depression, and what this is it's a government-run program, and instead of paying people not to work, in other words, unemployment insurance, and you go down and collect your unemployment, and they go home and sit and watch TV. What you do is you apply, and they can't turn you down. Everybody's accepted, and then they give you a shovel, and you go out on a 40-hour week, and but nobody's there, and nobody's telling you have to do something. So I'm sure a lot of them initially would end up standing on, leaning on the shovel. But after a while, I think what we find is that a bunch of them would go, well, wait a minute, I'm on this government job to get this WPA money, and I'm not really doing anything. If I would actually start digging with this shovel, I could turn around and go to work for a construction company and really make a lot more money. So the next thing you know, they'd be off the welfare rolls, and they'd be actually making money. And the others who are still on there, after a while, they go, well, I'm tired of leaning on the shovel. I might actually start shoveling something. And the next thing you know, all this money that we're paying out for unemployment, you got people who are making a living, earning the living. They feel better about themselves, and society gets something done. A ditch digged, a canal built, something, have something to show for the money.
Yeah, we have enough infrastructure in schools, and the entire country needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. It wasn't designed to last 5,000 years. We're 50 years into our highway system. It's time to rebuild everything. Knock down a school, build two more.
Knock down an old bridge, put up a better one.
Exactly.
By the way, yes, and you're absolutely right, because in my book I point out that while we're squandering all these billions of dollars in wars over in the Middle East and in over-bloated defense contracts and war machines and everything else, the American Society of Civil Engineers have given our infrastructure a grade of D+. We're just barely above failure in our own infrastructure.
Yeah, I've fixed enough car tires from potholes to live up to that. Let me ask you this, Jim. When you have done so much research, not only in into the occult side of things and ufology and the Illuminati and the New World Order, JFK, these things that seem to be connected. And as you research, and before anybody thinks that population control and ufology could possibly connected, you have seen all of that. As you turn over these stones in your research, what's the common thread that you see time and time again?
Well, I think the common thread is that all throughout history there's been a small handful of individuals who have tried to run the world. And in their zeal to do this, they have, of course, killed millions and millions of people, created all kinds of warfare and all kinds of deprivation, all kinds of privation, all throughout history. And right now, even though they feel like that they have the God-given right to be blue-blooded rulers, the decisions that they're making for this country, in fact, for the whole world, is not necessarily in the best interest of the human race. So, I think that kind of prompts the question of, well, are these folks even us?
Well, when you look at you're in the middle of the Roman Empire, you're at year zero and life is good. You don't think that it's ever going to end. You're building roads across Europe. You're rolling ships into the UK for the first, you know what I mean? And the same thoughts were going through the Mongolian Empire, or when Japan was doing their thing. And if you can even look at, say, Portugal or Spain at the height of their influence around the world, and the United Kingdom. But all of those great civilizations, the Egyptians, everything, Greece, look at Greece today and what Greece was at 400 BC. There was no way that Greece was ever going to fall. They were the center of technology.
Well, Alexander the Great actually conquered the world.
Yes,
at least the known world to him.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And
today, Greece is getting browbeat because they can't even manage their budget.
Yeah, well, they all got browbeat. Look what happened to Rome. So here we are today, and we look at the United States. There's no way we could topple. There's no way we can go anywhere. We're the greatest.
That is called normalcy balance. Normalcy belief. You turn on the tap in the kitchen sink and the water comes out. You don't think anything about it. But if you turn on the tap and no water comes out, then all of a sudden you're shocked because, hey, that's not supposed to be that way. And yet, if you'll really stop and think, it was less than 100 years ago that most people would have said magic if you just turned on the faucet and water came out. They just didn't have it. They went to the bathroom in the outhouse. They had to bring water in by jugs. They rarely took a bath, except for the extreme rich who've been. And that's another thing. Today, even the poorest people in the United States have a color TV. They got cold beer in the icebox. They got a bed to sleep in. They got a running water and a toilet, which beats the heck out of most Americans in, say, 1919. Okay, in the beginning of the 20th century. That's how much we've progressed. But we have this normalcy bias that says, well, it's always been that way in my lifetime, so it's just going to continue to be that way. But it may not.
Well, and all of those great empires, they fell and crumbled at their peak.
Yes.
At their peak. And which is kind of, the way you can look at the United States now. We've been hanging tough here for over 200 years.
We're following the exact track of the Roman Empire, except it took them 1,000 years to rise and fall, and it's taken us just 200 years to rise and fall.
Yeah, they fell in about 2 weeks. And what can we do, Jim, before we let this slip away?
We start taking action on our own. Number one, read my book. Listen to Jimmy Church. Listen to all these other alternative media. Try to find out and sift through all the hype and propaganda and media blather and find out what's truly going on, and then share it with your friends and neighbors and family, and then start acting proactively. Read the labels in the grocery store. Tell the grocery store manager, I don't want this aspartame that turns to formaldehyde and makes people sick. I do not want that in my soft drinks, in my diet drinks. Stop carrying this. And when enough people say, no, we don't want that, believe me, they'll stop carrying it. Okay? In fact, let me give you a great little story here about Walter Scheib. Walter Scheib was the White House master chef during the Clinton administration and through the Bush administration for a time. And then here recently, people were chastising Hillary Clinton because she is such a stalwart supporter of Monsanto and of GMO foods and all like that. And they were saying, she probably just eats the same crap. And Walter Scheib stood up and published a piece in the Food magazine and said, no, when he was a chef in the Clinton White House, Hillary insisted that they only eat farm-fresh, non-GMO foods. In fact, she even had a garden on the roof of the White House to make sure that her and her family only got good, solid, nutritious foods to eat. Oops. Well, now he says that, and that started making the rounds on the Internet. And here a couple of weeks ago, he went hiking out in Arizona, and, then they found his dead body in a stream, and they said, oh, well, it was accidental. I guess he fell in and drowned.
An accident. An accident. Hey, Jim, where do you get your news? And when was the last time you took CNN serious or any other mainstream outlet?
I don't even listen to them most of the time. I get my news from everybody all around the world. My wife says I'm a news magnet because I've been at it for so long. I got people sending me every time, anybody knows my name, every time they find a story that blows them away. Like today, I'll give you a good example. Today, all of a sudden, somebody sent me a story from some obscure website, but it was a very well-grounded story and well-documented of these scientists who have found this 4,000-year-old mummy from Egypt, and they got to X-raying it and found out that it had a metal rod in his left leg and connect where it had and this is a modern technique, and they were using it 4,000 years ago. What an amazing story. And he had his pen in his leg. And somebody just sent that to me, and so, hey, I learned that today, passed it along to a few friends of mine, Linda Howe being one of them. And they're all just going, wow, that's a great story. But see, you're not going to hear that on CNN. And so I don't bother with those official government propaganda outlets. I have people sending me stories from all around the world. And yes, I get a whole lot of redundant stuff, but I just, there is a delete button, so I just keep going. But I learn about it. Nothing goes by. In fact, let me tell you here's an odd factoid. If you will turn off your TV and quit watching that 24-hour news channel, you'll find a couple of things. Number one, after a couple of weeks, you'll realize that you haven't missed anything important. If World War III starts, believe me, you're going to know it's happened, okay? And your neighbor's going to tell you, somebody's going to tell you, or you hear it on your car radio. All right, and the next thing is, you're going to find yourself feeling a lot more at ease, thinking for yourself, and a lot more comfortable with the world around you because you're not constantly bombarded with death and grief and privation and scandal and corruption, okay? Which, of course, now, keep in mind, I'm a journalist. I've been trained in news all my life. You have to understand, news is something that's out of the ordinary. So by the very definition, when there's a murder, a rape, a crash, a plane, automobile crash, government corruption, thank God that's still news because that means that's an aberration. That is unusual. The time we need to worry is when you pick up a paper and there's nothing but good news in there, okay? 3,000 cops did their duty today. That's not, if that's the news, then we're in real trouble because that means that's the the Minority Report. That's the odd thing out.
What about, although this show isn't a political show, but here we are right now with Donald Trump upsetting both sides of the aisle, and he is the anti-politician guy. You know, he's not a politician. Right. And I'm not endorsing or saying anything negative or positive about Trump, but what's amazing here is the paradigm shift on what is to be expected from a politician. And it appears to me that the United States and Republicans, the constituents, are responding in a positive way. Is it because he's not a politician, or is this the true beginning of the end?
Well, it's kind of worrisome to me on several accounts. Number one, when I first heard that Donald Trump's running for president, I just kind of snickered because I thought, who in the world would vote for him? But then when the establishment politicians and the leadership of the Democrat and Republican parties both, and the national corporate mass media all start attacking him viciously, then this tells me one of two things. Either he's a real threat to them, because he can't be bought, and he's speaking truth, and he's speaking directly to the people without the political gobbledygook, which would be kind of interesting, or he's being set up as a demagogue, just exactly with what happened with Hitler, who came along and spoke to the average guy and said, we're going to clean everything up, and we're not going to have the old class system, and we're not going to let the bankers run everything, and you saw what happened there. So I think we have to be pretty judicious in how we view all this, but I find it kind of refreshing that there's at least somebody who is forcing the debates to deal with some of the real issues in this country instead of having us run from pillar to post on some of these social issues like same-sex marriage or stem cell research. See, they'll argue left and right and get everybody arguing over those things. But when you get to the reality, when you get to foreign policy, when you get to the war policy, both of the Democrats and Republicans are all on the same page, and they're all just two separate wings of the same one party, and that's the war party.
Thank you so much, Jim, for coming on tonight. And you've got such a busy schedule, but the website is www.jimmars.com, and I can't wait to get you back on, and we'll do it when we both have some more time. Thank you so much. We love you.
Sounds great. Remember, there's more of us than there are of them.
That's what I'm talking about. Jim Mars, everybody. Thank you, Jim.
Good night.
You have a great night. Jim Mars, everybody. Just an amazing guy. Should be Jim Mars for president. This is Fade to Black. Bespoke Radio for the masses. When we come back after this short break, we'll be joined by Peter Levenda for Peter Levenda Part 2. Stay with us.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
Fade to Black. The best technicians in the business are employed by us. That's all I have to say. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Thank you to Jim Mars. Always amazing when he is on with us. And that's why we are Bespoke Radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. Last night, Peter Levenda was with us, and tonight, we decided to do a Peter Levenda Part 2. So, Peter, I'm going to avoid the long, lengthy CV intro. Let's just hit the ground running tonight.
Oh, man.
Oh, you want me to feed the ego? I can. You want me to do it?
No, that's fine.
I have a 20-minute bio on you that we could just
yeah.
So
just run that instead.
Last night, yeah, right. Last night, one of the things that I love doing with you, and it's connecting the dots in a global sense. And last night we left off with the UFO side of things, because with you and ufology, you weren't that guy. But as you started connecting the dots over the years in your research, you become by proxy that guy, and it wasn't intentional, was it?
No, it wasn't. I mean, there's a lot of really very good people out there doing work in this field. You know, you've got guys like Jim Mars, and you've got Richard Dolan and Timothy Good, and the list is on and on, Linda Moulton Howe. You have a lot of people who are doing some tremendous work in this area. And I figured, you know, there was nothing I could do to contribute, to add to that, to add to what they were already doing. And, you know, my specialty was more on the political side and, you know, the Nazis and, you know, history and all the rest of it. And yet, you know, as I pursued any of these threads to their logical conclusions, I kept coming across the UFO phenomenon. It was always there somewhere. You know, it would rear its ugly head, you know, and there I had to deal with it. And I thought, well, this is strange. You know, here I am writing about Nazis, and then, you know, I wind up having to talk about UFOs, or I'm writing about the Kennedy assassination, and I have to write about UFOs. It's like, so it was there. I could not avoid it. It's something that is pervasive. It's a phenomenon that's been very much part of not just American, but global life, at least since the 1940s. I mean, we have records, of course, of aerial phenomenon going back, you know, centuries and centuries and millennia, perhaps. But, you know, in modern times, since at least the end of World War II, until the present day. So it's something that's always there, and it's part of the story. It's part of the whole story. You can't really ignore it. It's something that you have to confront eventually, and so did I.
And have you, this is part of the conversation as we're going to develop this here, have you had a sighting?
No, I've never seen myself a UFO, and I think that's not the issue. I think if we don't recognize the reality of this phenomenon, unless we ourselves have the sighting, then we're not being scientific about it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I haven't seen that I pretty much know exists because the scientific evidence is there for it. We know viruses exist and bacteria and stuff like that I've never actually seen. You know, I know that there are certain countries that exist that I've never been to. So the same thing is true with UFOs. I think that the preponderance of evidence, the sightings by military people, by government people, by what we call credible witnesses, as well as by the average citizen, are so many, so detailed. In some cases, photographic evidence, videotapes, et cetera, and military guys from our country, from countries around the world, coming out and saying, well, yeah, there is a reality. They are out there, and we haven't built them. They're not of our manufacture. We don't know what they are. That's good enough for me, you know, to convince me that this is a real, genuine phenomenon, that it's something that it's important to us. We need to know what this is. We need to confront this issue somehow. We need to get our heads out of the sand, quite frankly. You know, other countries have already started to openly admit the existence of this without really knowing what they are. And I think that's the place we have to start from, too.
Last night, after our show with you last night, I went, and yes, I'll admit it right here live on the air, I went and dug up an old Long John Nebel show from 1958. And the show was on, of all things, and I do it random, by the way. I don't look at what the show is about. I pick a date, I know who it, you know, and I click and I'll just go with what, and I just happened to, he had on about 10 guys. You know how he did it, right? The table.
Yeah.
What do you call it? The party table or party line. And it was on Nazi technology. And it was fascinating and 3.5 hours long, and I couldn't stop listening to it. But this is the thing. 1958. So you're talking about 13 years off of World War II. That's a hop, skip, and a jump. And these guys were in contact with plenty of Nazi party guys, SS guys that were alive after that. It was 13 years. It's like 2002 to us. It's like yesterday. Sure. And they had all of this evidence of what they were calling circular craft that the Russians and the United States were going and scrambling to get, and they had all of this eyewitness testimony there. Now, I think about the research that goes on today about the subject, but in 1958, there was plenty of talk on the streets about circular craft, lenticular craft, circular craft, and the technology that was involved there. Where do you think, the reason why I ask you if you've ever seen anything, when we look at this research that was going on throughout the 50s and chasing down this Nazi technology, this isn't some modern internet fantasy or crackpot theory. This was a real researched subject in the 1950s. Could what they were seeing in the 1950s and throughout today, could it be these circular craft that the Nazis were indeed developing? It's not a figment of our imagination.
No, in the first place, let's make one thing clear. It was not and is not a figment of our imaginations. I mean, that's one of the ways that the subject has been ridiculed consistently since the end of the war. It's been a way of putting the whole thing in a box and making anybody who discusses it characterized as crazy. Okay, this is something that let's get past it. I think the whole community has to get past it. This idea that it could be the figment of our imagination, or maybe it's not really there. It's there. Okay, not necessarily every single sighting that's reported is a genuine sighting. There's all kinds of other stuff that it could be. But for the most part, number one, sightings are real. It's inescapable. There's no way around it. We have to accept that, number one. Number two, the Nazis. Yes, the Nazis were involved in a lot of secret weapon experimentation. Hitler, to the end of his days, believed there would be some weird machine that would be developed at Peenemünde or someplace that's going to come out and save the day. He knew there was a lot of research going on, taking place everywhere. But the Nazis themselves, in some cases, thought that some of the circular craft that you're talking about were not of earthly manufacture. We've had, some of the Nazi generals who were involved in it, who came over to work on our side after the war, during the Operation Paperclip days, when they talked and spoke in unguarded moments about this kind of phenomenon, they were not accepting credit or blame for it. They thought that a lot of what was going on was something that was not earthly, not man-made. That said, of course, they were trying to develop this type of craft. We know we've seen drawings, we've seen attempts to make prototypes of this craft. They were looking at different methods of propulsion. They were looking at some kind of an anti-gravity device. Joseph Farrell himself has talked and written about it a great deal. I know you know about that. So the evidence is there that they were looking at this technology. It is a possibility that some of the stuff that was flying around in the 50s were prototypes of Nazi craft that had been developed and were being experimented with. I kind of doubt it because, for one thing, the propulsion system is the key issue. If they were able to actually move these craft around using that propulsion system in the 1950s era, by today they would have, squadrons and squadrons of these things all over the place. They would have fixed that propulsion problem. They would have fixed it back in the 50s when we first saw them. So I don't think all the sightings, or even any of the sightings necessarily, are of the German weapons. But we know they were working on these weapons. They were working on a lot of weapons, not just, the saucer technology, if you want to call it that. They were working on a lot of very fancy weapons. So, and fancy energy systems, alternate energy systems. propulsion systems. They were heavily involved in it. And they would have done something like that had the war lasted maybe another 6-8 months. They would have had a bomb. They were pretty close to it towards the end. They had suddenly figured out some of the problems that they were having and coming up with the right kind of configuration for the atomic bomb. They were shipping parts of these bombs and documents and engineers to Japan as their war was ending, just to get this stuff out of the hands of the Allies into the hands of the Japanese, hoping the Japanese would use it to give a lot of problems to America, to use some leverage against the United States in the coming negotiations for Germany's surrender. There was a lot of stuff going on, and there was a lot of technology involved.
What was the origin of the Vril craft? And is there a paper trail going back to World War II, or were these saucers hoaxes?
I think they were possibly wishful thinking in some cases. When you say Vril craft, of course, we're going back to what we discussed last night about Vril, the idea that this represented a kind of energy source that could be manipulated, that could be harnessed, virtually an occult type of power, according to the Nazis, to the Nazi occultists. So the idea of a craft that could be powered, a vehicle that could be powered this way was a sort of fantasy of some of the German scientists. There's a lot that went on with Dornberger and Werner von Braun that we still don't know to this day, and I think some of that is still classified, quite frankly. I think we only found out about some of Werner von Braun's, Nazi past relatively recently. And Dornberger, we knew already, had been in charge of slave labor and the rest of it. And I think there was a lot more secrecy going on about what kinds of weapons they were inventing. It wasn't just V1s and V2s. They were involved in a lot more than that. And if it wasn't under Werner von Braun directly, it was under some of the other generals who were involved in the weapons research. And there were just a lot of people. They just uncovered about 6 months ago or 8 months ago, towards the end of last year, they just uncovered an elaborate underground facility near Salzburg that had been used during World War II to house secret weapons, missile systems, and everything else that the Nazis had actually used, and no one had known about the existence of this vast complex until an Austrian filmmaker kind of stumbled on it because he was looking at some of the old documents, some of the old paperwork that had survived, and they're giving him, coordinates for an underground complex. People were living, on top of this complex. They were living right there in the Salzburg area, which is an area of a lot of salt mines and everything else where Salzburg gets its name. And if this was going to be the location of the National Redoubt, where the Nazis were going to have their final last stand, where they were going to all group together there, the Nazi high command and whoever else was left out of the SS and the Wehrmacht, and they were going to sit there and fight this last-ditch stand, this Götterdämmerung battle that they were going to fight in this location. And no one really thought to look in this particular location. And the photographs are amazing. These are halls.
Yeah,
these
halls.
Are large,
75,
extensive. Yeah,
75 acres.
Yeah,
or more.
How did we not see this?
How did we? You would
for 70 years.
Yes, yeah. And when I read the story and when it broke, I read about it on the air, or I read it on the air. 75 acres. The doors were sealed with these huge granite blocks. And for years, the town was getting these crazy, off-the-chart radiation readings, and nobody thought to go and look and check. Now, what was being developed? We're talking about radioactive 75-acre underground facility, and there you go. Now, have you gotten any updates about the filmmaker? I know that he had said at that time, we're going to finish this documentary. We're going to get inside here. What's the latest news out of Salzburg?
I've been trying to contact him, quite frankly, ever since that story broke. I found some contact information for him, but he has not responded. I think he's been deluged with inquiries about this, and it's been very, very quiet. I'm, as eager as anyone else to find out what he knows. more details about this complex. There's some indication that Messerschmitt might have had access to parts of it for building another jet fighter that they were involved with. It might have been used to house some of their equipment, but the radioactivity is extremely concerning. What were they doing with radioactive material in this underground? It's not a bunker. We're talking about an underground complex.
Yes.
Virtually a small city underneath. I mean, 75 acres is not too shabby.
No.
And if there's uranium, or was uranium in that location, what were they working on? And why was it so secret? And why were cement blocks used to block it off? And everybody walked away, and nobody saw a thing. Nobody knew it was there. And if no one knew that one was there, how many others are there?
And the rumor, the story on the street in the city was, well, we it was top secret weapons research. We knew that. So the city knew, but nobody spoke about it. Yeah, of course they knew. And this radiation level is there, and it's been there forever, but nobody blew the whistle on it. They allowed the Nazis to seal it up. Like I said, granite blocks sealed off the entrance. They walked away, and we just now discovered it quite by accident. And it's just really strange. Nobody wanted to say anything about it. It was a fascinating story, and it is breaking news as we speak.
And we're making one assumption, too, which we probably shouldn't rush to make, and that is we're assuming that thing was blocked off and never used since about May of 1945. We don't know, since no one found it, since no one knew it existed, we don't know if that location was maybe in use after 1945.
No, we don't know anything. That's the whole point about this, and it's just kind of funny how it now appears that the whole friggin' city knew that this vast complex was there, that it was radioactive, and nobody said anything. And
so they were able to keep that secret from the Allies, right? How many more secrets, are buried out there? Not just near Salzburg, not just in Austria, but throughout Europe. How many more secrets are there? And how many more underground complexes? How much more secret weapons research?
Is the whole city guilty of conspiracy? Do you take them all to trial?
Good luck.
You know what I mean? It's just like you can't claim innocence here. What? Just because you're all good people, but if you don't talk about this, then you guys are all guilty of something. You're hiding something, and you all knew it.
Sure. Yeah. They're accessories after the fact, if nothing else.
There's something going on there. And, and the other element of it, and you kind of alluded to this, Peter, but it's a time capsule. Okay? It wasn't blown up. It wasn't ransacked. It was sealed up and then walked away from. So what the heck is on the other side of those granite blocks? Yeah. It's something, wouldn't it be funny? Die Glock sitting there. A flying saucer, an atom bomb, a bomb that was never used, but it was completed. Centrifuges, heavy water. All of this comes into play, and this complex is completely radioactive, and it's a fascinating thing. I'm totally with you on that. Let's take our break. And when we come back, we'll continue the conversation with Peter Levenda. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Bespoke Radio for the masses. Tonight, Peter Levenda, Part 2. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us, Peter.
Sure will.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
Are you a paranormal investigator, ghost hunter, or UFO skywatcher? If so, FNGinnovations.com has the product you definitely need in your investigations kit or go bag. Introducing the Morpholite Wide Beam Tactical Flashlights that put the light where you need it most. Traditional flashlights shine a focused round beam with limited line of sight in the dark. Morpholite Tactical Flashlights change all that, utilizing a revolutionary wide beam design to enable you to see safety hazards such as hanging wires and steel, pipes, and holes in the floor you just can't see with a focused round beam. In the field, where safety is paramount, a 180-degree beam increases orientation and peripheral vision in the dark. Morpholite flashlights are ideal for investigations in abandoned facilities such as houses and hospitals, factories, caves, and tunnels. Avoid those low-hanging tree branches that poke your eyes in the woods. Visit FNGinnovations.com to see a full line of tactical lights and accessories. That's FNGinnovations.com.
Now you can find all your favorite talk radio shows live, all in one place at TalkStreamLive.com. Listen from anywhere, office, home, or in your car. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com and click on one of the many live talk show hosts you want to listen to. It's free and easy. No computer? Download the smartphone apps. Never miss your favorite talk show. Find them all at TalkStreamLive.com.
Hey everybody, what's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. Expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONSymposium.com. That's MUFONSymposium.com. Go Beckley Tepe.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Peter Levenda, part 2. I can never get enough of Peter Levenda. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. Peter, we had Jim Mars on earlier tonight, and I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked him earlier, because I find this fascinating with the two of you. Because with both of you, your research goes so far and wide and covers so many different subjects, but it always kind of, you find the same culprits, if you know what I mean. Right. And so with you, as you're turning over these rocks and you're flipping them over all the time, what's the one consistent thing that you keep finding out where you just go, okay, and you're not even surprised anymore? What's that underlying thing that you keep flipping over?
That's a good question. I think that there's a number of things. There's a number of issues that have bedeviled people like us who do this kind of research. One is dealing with government secrecy is, really a major pain, especially because there are things that we're researching that should no longer be secret. That stuff that's been over 100 years, and we're still trying to figure it out. That's an issue. But as far as the actual subject matter that keeps coming up, in the first place, as I said, I got into the UFO field, later than most people, because I was kind of forced to by the research. I mean, no matter what kind of disparate stuff I was researching, no matter from what historical period, I would come across these same references and mysterious allusions to secret technology and secret devices that were being developed by individuals, and claims of strange experiences regarding these machines. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I kept coming across all the time, and that was one thing that always crops up. And the other thing, I think, one of the reasons I've stuck studying the post-war, Nazi phenomenon, for so much, and I've done already 3 books about it, dedicated specifically to that, is because I come across them constantly. I come across this, as we called it yesterday, we talked about it yesterday, the spider web. I come across it constantly. I mean, no matter what I'm researching, I could be researching something pretty innocuous. I could be researching, terrorism, for instance, in the Middle East. And I dig a little bit deeper, and suddenly, you turn over a rock, like you say, and there's all these Nazis pouring out. I mean, it's incredible. If I research technology, I come across Nazis. If I'm researching political insurrections in different countries around the world, I come across Nazis. If I'm researching dictatorships in Latin America or Asia, I come across Nazis. It's like they're everywhere. It's like the whole earth is like this one big roach motel. They can check in and not check out. And they're just there all the time. They're there politically, they're there economically, they're there in industry and in science and technology. They're inescapable. And if it's not them, the ones who survived the war, it's their protege. It's the people that they've mentored. It's the organizations they've cultivated. It's the ideology that they've introduced into parts of the world where they were just embraced as the reason to go on and to conduct, horrible, violent operations against the rest of the world. That's something that comes up all the time.
And what about the larger corporations in the world? Everybody wants to talk about Monsanto, and everybody wants to talk about Bank of America, and these large financial institutions, but also corporate America and corporate world. Has that been infiltrated too?
Well, to a large extent. I mean, when we talked about the 9 yesterday, we were talking about some of America's largest corporations. I mean, the families behind them, like the DuPont and, the Astors and the Forbes, et cetera. I mean, we're talking about old money in the United States that contributes, greatly to the economic profile of the United States. It contributes to the development of some of our largest corporations, and at the same time, concerned with some of the strangest obsessions that you can imagine. It's when it comes to occultism, or when it comes to strange fringe political or spiritual ideologies, and when it comes to concern about flying saucers. You'll find all of this when you look there. When you look at the large corporations, I worked for Fortune 500. I worked for a Fortune 100 corporation back in the 1970s. I worked for the Bendix Corporation. And the Bendix Corporation at that time had 80,000 employees worldwide, and we're talking in the 1970s. They had offices everywhere, and their people were being picked up and murdered by guerrillas. I mean, we lost one guy down in South America to guerrilla warfare, to terrorists who killed him down there. We've lost people every place. And as I worked for Bendix, as I worked at their international marketing operation in Manhattan, you came across the fact that, a lot of the people we worked with were of questionable political alliances. We had people that had very strange political connections. And when the Watergate hearings started, and when the Church Committee started, and when people started talking about, American corporations being involved in dirty tricks and dirty stuff overseas, the people in my office in Manhattan started shredding stuff like crazy. I mean, this was a huge corporation. This was massive. It was very diversified. We sold all kinds of stuff all over the world. Customers of ours included the Shah of Iran at that time, the governments of Pakistan, of Egypt, Syria, Taiwan, all sorts of groups, all sorts of countries, all sorts of dictatorships, basically. When the Civil War, the military junta took over in Chile in September of 1973, when they overthrew Salvador Allende, there was a military coup. I was working for Bendix at that time. And suddenly we're getting all of these orders from the Chilean armed forces. They wanted, all this, not munitions necessarily, but spare parts for their planes, for their tanks, for all of that stuff. This stuff was pouring in. You began to realize you were in the epicenter of world conflict, and that these world powers, whether dictatorships or whatever they happen to be, relied upon American corporations, large corporations, to support them, to finance them, to provide them with materiel that they needed. It's not just the bullets and the guns, which is the sexy part of arms smuggling. They also needed the practical stuff. They needed parts for their cars. They needed parts for their tanks and for their airplanes. They needed spare parts for all sorts of equipment we would not normally associate with military programs. So I saw that firsthand, which is one of the things that opened my eyes back then, because this was at the time of Watergate. 73 was the Watergate break-in, and by 75 it was pretty much all over, and Nixon was out. And during that time, I'm working at this large multinational corporation. I'm going, oh, goodness gracious, what am I looking at? And I didn't use words like goodness gracious. I said stuff we can't say on the air.
Right,
and I'm
right.
looking at all this, I'm thinking, oh, my God. And here I am. I'm just like this lowly staffer, in this office, and I'm staring at and listening to these conversations. And that was one company. That was not the biggest American company. It was not the most powerful. It was just one country. It ranked number 72 at the time I worked there in the Fortune 500 list. So it wasn't even the top 10 or the top 50. It was a big company. It was powerful. And we had to look at other companies that were bigger than us, more powerful than us, involved in much more than even we were.
And
so, the corporations,
And with your research, you have the occult side of things, and of course the Nazis, and you can start throwing in secret organizations like the Masons and other things that were involved in your research. But then it started to cross the lines into religious organizations, specifically the Vatican, and other religious things that should have had a sense of morality there, but everything started to blend into each other, didn't it? There wasn't really a moral line in the sand there. It seemed like everything was moving along with the same agenda for you, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. This is the thing. I think this is what many of us don't realize unless we really get out there in the world and see it for ourselves, and that is that it's all about power. Power is a naked force, and anyone who's come in contact with it normally wants more of it. And suddenly religious ideology goes out the window. National feelings go out the window. Patriotism goes out the window. All of this goes out the window because power becomes a drug, an addictive drug. And people always want more of it, more power. I think it was Kissinger who said power is the ultimate aphrodisiac.
Right.
Which that's coming from Kissinger. You guys can go fill in the blanks yourself. But we're talking about, something that is transcends national boundaries, transcends ideologies. And occultism, the sacred societies we're talking about, occultism is based on understanding that power, its source, its origins, how it's developed, how you cultivate it, how you use it, how you direct it. It's all about power. It's all about how the strength of the human will, for instance, and the energy within the human body for an individual person. And then you multiply that by a corporation that has 80,000 people. Then you multiply it by a political party that has millions upon millions of people. And if it's done correctly, you wield this enormous weapon with which you can do almost anything. So the secret societies are very much part of everything that happens in the world. People will not admit it. People will poo-poo it, just like they try to ridicule the idea of the of flying saucers, of UFOs. But secret societies are with us. They've been with us since the beginning. They were very much involved in creating our country in the United States and many countries around the world, including in South America. They've been very active. They morph. They change. They may change their names. They may change, some details about how they organize. But basically, it's the same people over and over and over again.
Is it because, you start off at the ground level with somebody that is quite possibly weak, that is lost, so they turn to religion or they turn to a political group and they want to belong and they have the best of intentions. Look at the power elite that's in Washington, D.C., but you start off as a city councilman and you want to change and make your community better, and then you turn into a George Bush in the end. Like you said, power ultimately corrupts. And it does the same thing with, somebody that's going into Scientology. They're lost. They need direction in their life, and they're taking advantage of somebody that is quite possibly weak at that moment, or the Vatican or another religious group. But so at the ground level, you start off innocent, but in the end, you're the Pope and you're completely corrupt. Why the change in humans? Why does this happen? And it seems to happen, like I said, whether you're religious or whether you're political, a dictatorship, whatever, ultimately power corrupts and it gets twisted. And here we are with population control and the Georgia Guidestones. Something goes fundamentally wrong with this. What is the problem?
Well, it's because of the trade-offs that we make. I mean, you take a person who starts off quite innocent. They want to change the world. They want to do whatever they can to make the world a better place. So they meet a person who promises to help them to do this. And the person seems to be altruistic. And they do help that person, in minor ways and small ways. The person begins to feel comfortable. And then the person is asked to do something else in return for these benefits. And the person thinks nothing of it. And gradually, they begin to become conscious of the fact that they've actually been in the process of selling their soul, but they're now in too deep to pull out, or that's at least what they think. They want to do the most good for people. They still have this dream in their head, but at this point, it's become the end justifies the means. And once the end justifies the means, once you believe in that, then you're willing to do almost anything, commit any crime in order to further this agenda that you have. And your agenda is going to come up crashing against the agendas of other people. So eventually what's going to happen is you're all going to get kind of neutralized by people who have the ultimate power in this case. And then eventually, your dreams have become seconded or tailored to fit somebody else's dream, basically. And the dreams that you started off with are gone. And that's what happens to our politicians. I'm fairly certain, not all of them necessarily, but a great many of them. They get into politics because they think they're going to change things. They're altruistic. They have, genuine human concerns. And then eventually they find out that there's a machine in this country and in every country that really controls who has access to that power. And you can get elected because you're very charismatic and you say all the right things. And then once you get inside, somebody takes you into a room and says, okay, this is how it's going to play out from now on. These are the people who have the real power. Forget Congress.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I'm listening to you and to your answer, and I don't know if you're talking about the Democrats, the Republicans, or Walmart, or the Vatican, or the banking system. I don't know.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't, does it?
No. It doesn't matter.
It's
you're not going to be able to isolate, one group that has their hands clean in all of this. I mean, I have my suspicions in certain cases. When it comes to the Nazis and it comes to the Republican Party, those guys are very comfortable with each other for some reason. And more so than the Democrats. People have criticized me for saying that, like I'm a shill for the Democratic Party, which I'm not. But my research only proves this particular point. That when it comes to, in this country, when it comes to the extreme right, when it comes to fascist ideology, when it comes to supporting former Nazis, protecting them, getting them into the country, giving them visas and passports and jobs and money, It's the Republicans who are going to be doing that. You know, the Democrats, I've tried to find, evidence of, culpability among major Democrats or even minor Democrats in helping Nazis escape and all the rest of it, and doing all of these things to hide them and to give them, a safe haven in the United States or other countries. And I can't find it. I find it with Republicans consistently. The World Anti-Communist League and groups like that, heavily, Republican Party funded, the Captive Nations people, heavily, Republican Party funded. So in that case, in the case of, fascism and Nazism in the United States, especially post-war, yeah, I can pretty much isolate it to one party. But when it comes to, in general, the idea of running the country, I just don't think that, we're talking Republicans and Democrats. I usually tell people it's like, alien versus predator. I mean, which side are you going to come down on?
Yeah, right, right. Well, it's so funny. I try to avoid politics like the plague, but politics is conspiracy, and I love a good conspiracy. And
well, we had with as I mentioned before, we had Bush and Kerry running against each other for the presidential election, and both have been members of Skull and Bones.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
yeah. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. And
there was no non-secret society ballot you could vote for.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
And what are the odds when you only initiate 16 people per year?
Per year,
what
seniors.
are the odds of having two guys run for president who are both Skull and Bones?
Yeah,
they're astronomical.
When I hear people say, "Well, you know what? The Democrats would never do that." And I think about what's going on right now, and when I go to the gates of hell, and I'm sure I will one day, right? And it's going to be Hillary standing there with a fork in her hand, laughing, welcome. So don't, it scares the crap out of me, man. She's got horns hanging off her head just like anybody else does. In the worst of ways.
You get down to the type and you say, so, okay, now what do I do? I mean, people ask me this all the time, too. Okay, who do I vote for then, right? Or do I vote? Is voting even, useful in any way, shape, or form? And then all of the stuff, and it leads into this sort of attitude of, well, we can't do anything. We're slaves of the system. We're never going to break out. There's nothing you can do. And I really resist that as strong as I possibly can. I think that's what they want us to think, and that's how they want us to behave. Resistance is futile, right? Just give up. Everything is all right. Everything is under control, literally under control. So I think if we do fall into that trap of thinking there's nothing we can do, and there's no one to support, and there's no, political platforms that you can, align yourself with, then we've basically done their work for them.
Well,
we're just giving it up.
When we look at the elite today, and you and I are about the same age, you're a little older than I am, but the taxation issue, when you go back to the 50s and to the 60s, where no matter what, it seemed like everybody was getting hit with 40%, and that's it, and you look at today how everything is completely skewed. Where there is, the middle class now is the lower class, and that there really is no poor. It's like everybody is on the same. Well, of course there's poor, but you understand what I'm saying. But that extreme to the right on that curve now, the rich, is so there's so much money in that end, in that 1%, in that 10th of 1%. And Jim Mars and I were just talking about that. How did the elite pull that off? How did they get all of the money? How did they get taxation figured out? How did they get the stock market figured out? How, the insider trading, and allow all of this to happen to control everything so quickly? It seems like it happened in the last couple of maybe 20 years. And we've all allowed it to happen. It's like we backed off and sat on our hands and allowed it to happen. How did it happen?
Well, we weren't watching the store. I think probably the most difficult thing for us, for people in general, but probably for Americans to contend with, is this very issue, the idea of taxes. I mean, you hear a lot of very simplistic responses when it comes to, taxes and who should pay taxes and how much taxes they should pay. Nobody really has a clue what's in the U.S. budget, right? No one's actually read the budget. Remember, we have to pass the budget. We have to pass the law before we know what's in it as far as the Affordable Care Act was concerned. I mean, we have huge amounts of information, but the things that we need to know are buried, deliberately so. The people who are doing this know exactly what they're doing. And it is, 0.1%. Basically, the United States has turned into a banana republic, and not in a good way. Turned into a kind of a Guatemala. Now, we used to make fun of Guatemala when I was a kid. Guatemala was like the ultimate banana republic.
Right.
As it turned out, that wasn't even true. As it turned out, we, meaning the United States and the CIA specifically, characterized the leader of Guatemala as a communist when he was just the opposite, because he was going to nationalize United Fruit. Well, we couldn't have that. So we developed this huge, false set of rumors and stories and everything else leading up to, a military invasion and overthrow of this guy who was actually on our side from the beginning. This is what we've been doing. This is what we're so good at, pulling the wool over people's eyes, making them look in the wrong direction, and then deluging them with this impossible stuff to understand. I mean, we don't understand our own credit card receipts, right?
Right.
When we get a bill with all that fine print, we don't know what the hell is on there. We don't read it. We can't understand it if we did read it. And the same thing is true for our insurance documents and everything else. We are given jargon. We are given legalese. We are, buried under all kinds of paper until the point where we give up and we just sign whatever they want us to sign. And that's what we've been doing for the last, I think, longer than 20 years. I would say going all the way back to at least the 70s. We've been just signing away our heritage, piece by piece, little by little, in exchange for some kind of false sense of security, and people telling us, well, you need to do this now. This is the paperwork you have to file now. This is what you have to have. And we've been doing it. And there's been somebody at the other end of it very, gratefully taking every penny that we've sent in. It's the economics of this thing are almost impossible to understand. They are so complicated. And they're not based just in the United States. This is an interlocking system of banking around the world. I mean, when we've had banks with secrecy laws, we've had the Bank of International Settlements, probably Jim Mars may have mentioned it,
yep.
Or at least it's been discussed anyway. We've had really strange banking operations around the world, funneling money, financing money, keeping money black, so we don't know who owns it and where is it going. I mean, come on, this is not. We treat money like we treat power, like we treat sex, right? Money is something that's secret that we don't want to talk about. It's something that we keep to ourselves, something that we're not going to discuss with anyone else. And our little piece of power, we jealously hold on to it. And all of us individually do that. And what happens is these other guys come in and take all of it,
I had some friends over at Casa Day Church over the weekend, and we were talking about this exact subject. And it was really fun. Well, I'm not part of the I'm not part of this. The cabal doesn't exist and the Illuminati. And I said, hey man, do you own a house? Sure I do. I said, you got a credit card? Yeah. Well, dude, you're doing exactly what they need you to do, right there. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do I mean? You don't own that house, and as long as you're on that treadmill, then you are facilitating the agenda. Now, look, Peter, I'm a homeowner. I get that. Okay, some things you can't avoid. I get that. But if you want to understand how the machine works and global banking and secret families, with an agenda globally, then that's all part of the system. As long as they can get you to wake up in the morning and not think about and deflect what is real and just get you to make that money to keep you in debt, that's it. They're loaning you money that they don't even have, that is part of an interest payment that's coming in from another bank. That's just the way that it works, and it's not here in the United States. It's globally, and you are part of the system. That's the end of the discussion. There's nothing else to discuss. And once they kind of understand and you open up their eyes to it, then you get it. But then again, there's no way around it unless somehow $500,000 drops in your lap one day, falls out of the sky, hits you in the head, and you can buy a house. Other than that, there's no alternative, is there?
Well, no. And even if you buy the house, you're not really going to own it. You're going to have to pay taxes on that house.
Yep.
You're going to have to maintain insurance on that house that you don't want and don't need, but you're going to be forced to do this. So eventually they will take the money away from you, or they'll work you to death in order for you to keep up all the payments. That's just the way it is. I mean, there's no way out. You don't actually own anything. And once you get to the point where you realize that, you can maybe free yourself up a little, and get something done with your life, But we had this expression, you've heard it 100 times before. They used to talk about bread and circus, right?
Yes.
Bread and circus. I mean, this is how you kept the population under control since the days of ancient Rome. You gave them enough bread so that they didn't starve to death, so they would not revolt. And then you distracted them with circus. You distracted them with entertainment. So they would just sit there in a trance and not be able to get themselves together, get their act together to have a revolution. And what are we doing now? I mean, we are so much in a trance state in this country. It's not funny. We're watching television constantly. We're watching reality television. I mean, my goodness, people, why are we doing that? There's no content there. There's no education there. There's nothing enlightening there. This is nothing, but we're devoted to it and to social media and to everything else. So we are entertaining ourselves constantly, and we're being entertained, which is a substitution for thought, and it's definitely a substitution for action.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the book that you're working on. Is that okay? Can we discuss future plans?
We can.
Let's do that. Fade to Black. Peter Levenda, Part 2. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Peter. When we come back, we're going to talk about his new book, The Tantric Alchemist. Be released later on in 2015. Be back right after this. Stay with us.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Attention, all Fader Knots. Studio Dome has a special deal on their SD1 Bluetooth speaker. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on their banner, enter the promo code Jimmy, and you get $40 off and free shipping on the SD1. It's voice activated, comes with a USB antenna, cables, and a carry bag. Never listen to your phone, tablet, or laptop speakers ever again. It's the only way to listen to Fade to Black. That's jimmychurchradio.com, Studio Dome banner, promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
Hey everybody, what's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. Expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONSymposium.com. That's MUFONSymposium.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. Tonight, Peter Levenda, part 2. Part 2. Peter's one of the best. We're going to talk about his new book that he is working on now. It's going to be released later in 2015. It's called The Tantric Alchemist. Peter, what's it about? Let's just start there.
Well, I was fascinated since I can tell you exactly the year, 1968. A book was published called The Works of Thomas Vaughan, Mystic and Alchemist. And it had an introduction by the man they used to call Father of the Beats, Kenneth Rexroth, an old San Francisco guy who was basically knew about everything. This guy was extremely cultured. He was a poet, but he knew a great deal about Asian religions, and he knew a great deal about a lot of things. He wrote the foreword to this book, and the combination of his foreword and the book itself caused this weird sort of cortical fusion in my brain, and made me really interested in a lot of things that I would never have thought I was interested in. Thomas Vaughan was an alchemist. He lived in England in the 17th century. He was married, and his wife was also an alchemist, which made him extremely unusual for the time. For any time, you very rarely hear of male-female couples engaged in alchemy, which is a strange practice anyway. Alchemy, we think of it in terms of turning lead into gold, or finding the elixir of life, or eternal life, or healing all illness. And this was a serious, and remains a serious practice that's at least 2,000 years old, from around the world, Asia, in India, in China, in the Middle East. This was practiced for at least the last 2,000 years, and eventually in Europe as well. And it's one of those things where nobody can understand the books of alchemy. The alchemical texts are impossible to understand. I mean, they're written in an allegorical language. It's a coded language. It's called sometimes the twilight language, because it's not really clear what they're writing about, and yet they're seriously writing about something. And Rexroth said, well, if you want to understand what these books are about, and you want to understand how Thomas Vaughan and his wife both died under mysterious circumstances, you'd have to study Chinese alchemy. You'd have to study yoga, particular forms of Indian alchemy, before you could begin to understand what they were up to. Well, that was a challenge for me. I saw it that way. And I began to study all of this material. I began to study Mandarin back in the early 70s, which I actually made use of later doing business in China. But the original impulse for studying Mandarin was to study Chinese texts that had not been translated yet on this very subject. So I started studying Chinese, and I went to China many times, in India and places like that. And eventually I found that I was able to read his work, which is the clearest of all the alchemical work, all the alchemical texts. I was able to read it and decode it as I was reading it. And I finally realized what he was up to, the kinds of practices he was engaged in, and the practices he was engaged in with his wife, Rebecca, who died mysteriously one day during an alchemical experiment. So I felt that this was the right time at this point to put all of this data down and to share with people what I had learned about this particular practice. It has relevance for a lot of different subjects that I've been writing about for years. It's connected to different forms of occultism, some of these things we've been talking about yesterday and today about power, and about groups like POTO, groups like Maria Naglowska and Orsic and the Tula Gesellschaft and the Vril Gesellschaft, the Vril Society and the Tula Society. All of this is connected to this particular kind of practice. And I've talked about it in The Tantric Alchemist pretty much in depth. I've introduced Chinese alchemy, Indian alchemy, and then I've taken 4 or 5 texts that Thomas Vaughan wrote, and I go through them and decode them to show what he was writing about, what the terminology meant, and to give people an introduction as to what alchemy really is, which is a fascinating subject, and it's not what we think it is.
Oh, I love alchemy. All aspects, every angle, everything. And so let me ask you this. I want to talk about Falconelli too as well, but how were you able to translate and decode, and how long did that take? And what was your reference? How did you, or is this secret?
No. When I started to read In Chinese alchemy, there are two forms, the inner alchemy and the external or outer alchemy. I began to realize that they were using terminology which was suspiciously identical to the kind of terminology European alchemists used, except the Chinese were using it to refer to parts of the human body.
Right.
And that was the beginning of decoding. And then Indian alchemy was even more explicit. Indian alchemy was using terms like mercury and cinnabar and crucible, all of these concepts that we get from European alchemy that we believe refer to laboratory equipment and chemical substances, and which do in external alchemy, but which also refer to parts of the human body and processes of the human body. It's very much a biological, or we could say a psychobiological process. Alchemy has to take place on two different levels simultaneously. It takes place in the external because you're using laboratory equipment in Western-style alchemy. So it's externalized. You're doing things in the world. You're manipulating substances. And at the same time, you are manipulating internal substances. There are internal processes that are taking place that are mirroring the external processes that you're using, that you're developing in the laboratory. Both of these things have to go together. The reason is the alchemists are trying to get back to that first moment of creation when everything started. They're trying to experience it and trying to understand how everything came into existence. If they can understand that, then ideas like the Philosopher's Stone, changing base metals into gold, or finding the elixir of life to prolong life, which are basically two ways of talking about the same thing, suddenly become clear.
Have you, in your research, modern alchemists, were you able to locate and communicate with some of them?
There are modern alchemists, and they're not really hiding. They're remarkably accessible. There was the Paracelsus Research Society out in Salt Lake City, in Nevada, in Utah rather, that was involved in practical alchemy, actually using alchemical substances in laboratories to create the alchemical substances that were written about in the books. And there are present-day alchemists. There's a book called Real Alchemy, which pretty much details what they call spagyric, or the alchemy of plants, as well as the alchemy of metals. They give you the actual, processes for how to do these various things. They're very explicit about it. The alchemists are kind of coming out of the woodwork and writing about these things and trying to demystify some of it. But at the same time, there's a constant reference to a mystical aspect to the art of alchemy, which to me is fascinating. It's the idea that you have to do both. One without the other is not going to work. The laboratory work without the spiritual work doesn't work. And oddly enough, the spiritual work by itself also doesn't work. It's got to also be manifested in the real world. And that sort of appealed to me because as a child of the 60s, you were either going to be a revolutionary because you were going to help all the people, or you were going to become a mystic and help only yourself, And so there didn't seem to be a way to do both. And in a sense, alchemy is about doing both.
What did Thomas? Well, he started off in the clergy, and then Vaughn was kicked out of the church. And I'm not a Vaughn specialist. I've just read about him over the years. But did you find that he discovered something?
Well, he was involved in the English Civil War. He was fighting on the side of Charles Stuart, Charles I, when Cromwell and his people were trying to overthrow the British monarchy. So he was on the wrong side of that fight in terms of who won initially. That's why he lost his position as a clergyman. He was kind of more or less set out on his own devices. The same with Henry. Henry wasn't really studying he had a brother Henry, a famous metaphysical poet. Henry Vaughan wasn't really interested in the clergy, but he was interested in a lot of the same stuff that Thomas Vaughan was. And they both found themselves out of luck because they were fighting on the wrong side. And that's when they began to pursue alchemical studies in earnest. Thomas Vaughan went up to Oxford. He studied there. He studied medicine, pharmacology, and alchemy. And when the Civil War was over, and when Charles II came back and restored the Stuart monarchy, Thomas Vaughan became basically a court alchemist, working for the king. So this was long after his wife had died, so he was still working as an alchemist. And he stopped writing shortly after his wife died. They were married for 7 years. And from that point on to the rest of his life, he never wrote another word. He never revealed anything else. He never discussed alchemy in print, in letters or correspondence that I can find with anyone after the death of his wife. And yet he was still employed as an alchemist.
What was the experiment that they were working on that killed her?
Well, Kenneth Rexroth describes it as an unguided autonomic nervous system experiment in his typical way.
What is that?
What is that? Yeah. Well, I've done a lot of research on that particular concept, and he was really onto something there with that. It turns out that there is a actual medical condition which is referred to as Kundalini syndrome, sometimes referred to as India syndrome. It happens when people go to India, Westerners usually. They're desperate to, find spiritual truth and whatever else. They get involved in yoga. They get involved particularly in Kundalini yoga or aspects of Tantra yoga. And they are not very careful. They don't really follow the strict regimens that are necessary. They push their bodies to the limit in terms of trying to control the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system controls your breathing. It controls your heartbeat. It controls a lot of interior functions you're not conscious of. When you extend conscious control over unconscious processes, you're kind of asking for trouble. And the first way you do that is to control your breathing, right? Pranayama, as they call it in India. You're controlling the flow of your breath rate, because as you control your breath rate, you're extending control to other unconscious systems. And if you're not doing this with a teacher who knows what they're doing, you could be asking for trouble. You could be finding that you're interfering with systems that normally run on their own, quietly in the background, as we say in computer science. And in this case, they are, you're interfering with them and causing some kind of trouble. You can cause a terrible increase in your heart rate. You can cause a terrible decrease in it. Both of these are life-threatening. There's all sorts of things that can happen that can go wrong. And we know from reading Vaughan that he was aware of these processes, but was not always aware of the dangers, did not understand them. And we think his wife died for that reason. He's very cryptic about what happened to her. He does not go into any details. And yet he says that the day she died, he came up with his greatest discovery in alchemy on the same day. There's something very strange about all of that. So I discuss it in the book at some length.
Do you get into Falconelli?
I mentioned Falconelli in passing. Falconelli, of course, is a fascinating character. For the Fadernauts who are not familiar, Falconelli was an alchemist as well in the 20th century, probably French, from what we understand. We really don't know his real name, who he really was. There have been a lot of speculation about it. But he was someone who was considered to have actually discovered the Philosopher's Stone, helped a handful of other alchemists in their own search for the stone, and he promptly disappeared. Jacques Pauwels and Bergier, the two French authors of The Morning of the Magicians, claim that the Allied forces were looking for Falconelli during World War II and at the end of World War II, because they felt he understood about alternate energy and other things that they were really concerned about, possibly even atomic fission. So they were looking for Falconelli, who they claimed had this kind of information. I don't know if that's true or not, but there is some scattered information that indicates it might have been true, that someone in the American Armed Forces was looking for Falconelli for that reason. So he's a very fascinating character. We don't know very much about him. We just know him through reputation, sort of like we know about Saint-Germain, the alchemist of the 18th century, pretty much the same way.
Yeah,
someone who never seen age. He just stood up all the time.
Same thing with Falconelli, and one of his students, saw him many, many, many years later, and said that he hadn't aged, that he still looked the same. And what about the secret location that Falconelli was located at by his student? Did you ever find out where that was?
I've heard a couple of stories about that, and I tend to credit one of them. It seems as though he was located in Spain at one point and in south of France in another location, and the dates don't always jive, so I'm not quite sure which one is really true. But I've not gone to the location. I know he's no longer there. I mean, I can assume that he's no longer there since they published, his location. So I haven't really bothered to find out. So I really don't know. I mean, it's possible Falconelli is still with us somewhere.
When does
I just still,
when does the book come out?
I believe it'll be out in October.
It's going to be a fascinating read, and for me, we talk alchemy all the time on this show. Falconelli is one of my favorite subjects. All of the great alchemists. I think that there is something to whenever you have the old adage, right, where there's smoke, there's fire, and with the elixir of life and with the philosopher's stone. The pursuit of making gold. I think all of this there's something to the story, and it's one of the great secrets in that us the common aren't ever going to know the truth on that. That is something that is going to be closely guarded, and I think that you know more than you're talking about or revealing now, which is fine. There's no reason to bring it all out now. Certainly, we'll read the book when it comes out. But the one question that I have to ask: did you, when you were meeting with modern alchemists, do you think that knowledge is in possession with them, or with anybody out there on the planet? And I'm referring to the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. And
sure, I can answer it this way: alchemy is about a process. It's about one single fundamental process. It's what happened at the Big Bang, basically. Alchemy is about that, just like the Kabbalah is about that, the Sefer Yetzirah is about that, the Zohar is about that. Everything is about that moment. Everything is about that moment of creation. Everybody seems to agree on that, whether you're in India, China, in ancient Israel, or in 17th century England, it's the same idea. We're talking about a process that began at the moment of creation. The idea of changing lead into gold is kind of a code word for understanding how we went from this Big Bang, this explosion, this moment of creation, and suddenly you're sitting in a hotel room in Washington, D.C., and there's a television set, and there's a bed, and there's chairs and lamps and everything else. All of the stuff that's surrounding us, all the stuff that we see every day, is still in the process of becoming. It started with the Big Bang. We're still hurtling through the universe from that explosion. Everything that we see, everything we are, came from that one moment. The alchemists understand that. And so some alchemists may not have achieved the philosopher's stone yet or the elixir of life, but they're working with this process. They're painstakingly going through it step by step by step to get there. And as they do that, they uncover the chemical compounds that the alchemists talk about. They see the color changes in the crucible, in the retort, in the alembic that the alchemists of old wrote about. They see that they're on the right path, that the process is taking place. So that's really the best way I can answer your question.
And we'll leave at this. And again, thank you. So with all of the research going into alchemy, what's your take? Is it something that is viable and is real? Or is this, again, just conspiracy fantasy that's gone down for a couple of millennia?
No, I think that alchemy, probably of all of the things we've discussed, is probably the most real, even though it's the most elusive. I think that alchemy is definitely very real. There's a quality to it that once you understand, once you're able to read the text and understand what they're talking about, suddenly you realize what you're dealing with, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's with nothing else, it's a beautiful subject, which is a subject really about everything. It's about how we got here. It's about creation itself. So it's a very powerful subject, and I think it's I think it's worthwhile studying. Maybe we can't all do it. We don't all have the time or the resources to devote to it. But at least reading about it makes you understand a little bit better occultism in general, spirituality in general, even the world the way it is in general.
I already know what your next book is. All of this is going to tie together. It's all going to go back. And it's going to be Alchemy and Maury Island. You're supposed to laugh, Peter. Oh, I think we lost Peter. Peter, are you there? What a strange night here on the show. I think we have just lost Peter. Yes, we did. All right, that's it. Fade to black. A crazy night with technical stuff. But if you can hear me now, we will have all of everything will be up in one big, nice file. And we'll do that tomorrow, so don't you worry. And you can go back and listen and get caught up on anything that was lost tonight. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I have to say, what a fantastic couple of nights that we had. Okay, last night with Race Hobbs and Micah Hanks and Peter Levenda. Tonight, Jim Mars, Peter Levenda. Tomorrow night, Clifford Stone's going to be with us. Oh, by the way, Graham Bonnet will be with us next week. Spoke to him today, and he just wanted to say hi to everybody out there. But he is desperately working on his new album, and they are in the studio tonight and tomorrow night. So we'll have Graham on with us next week. But he did want me to tell everybody hello. All right, so there you go. Again, great week here on Fade to Black. Thank you to everybody. Tomorrow night, Clifford Stone will be right here. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Fantastic night. Everything is good. Peter's calling back, but we're already out of here. Thank you. Fade to Black is produced by Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, and Jonas. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster is Method of Signaling. Music is this guy right here. Doug Aldridge. Intro is Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA The Planet. Tomorrow night, Clifford Stone is right here live. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I want everybody to be safe. See ya.